Hey everybody, welcome to the IM Podcast YouTube channel.
Make sure to tap the bell, subscribe, and comment down below.
Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of the IM Podcast. We have waited a long time to have this guest with us today, so if you wouldn't mind, Dr. Taylor, would you introduce yourself?
Well, thanks for having me on. I am Beth Taylor. I'm a doctor and infertility specialist here in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And I work at a fertility clinic called Olive Fertility, which is one of the bigger fertility clinics in the country, and help people with all different scenarios of infertility, including donor eggs, donor sperm, surrogacy, and regular old IVF as well. So happy to get on and chat with any of these topics that you think is useful.
We're so happy to have you. Sorry, go ahead.
No, what were you going to say?
I want to know how you became a doctor and how you got into infertility and fertility and all those things.
Yeah, so I went to medical school, and then in medical school, I really liked women's health, and it was you might not get this from me, but I'm a bit of a nerd, and I really like the sciencey stuff.
Right.
And so I went into OBGYN because it's women's health, and in that area then really honed in on the science and the area of women's health that's changing the most, that has the most right from the cellular level all the way to the clinical level is in the infertility space. So that's what kind of got me excited by that, and when you're studying it and you're learning all about receptors and proteins and different parts of cells, that's that really got me quite excited. And so then I decided to do that as a fellowship. So then did a couple of years of extra training in infertility and fertility surgery and IVF, and then finished that and started my practice. Yeah.
Very cool. Did you go to med school or to university right out of high school? Did you take any time off?
I didn't. I did take time off. I went right from high school to undergraduate,
right,
and then right into medical school. In my residency, I took a year off, and I worked as a family doctor and kind of traveled the world.
Oh, cool.
But other than that, no, I went kind of straight through.
Where did you travel to? Where'd you go?
It's a funny story, actually. I went to China to try to learn some Mandarin, which was entirely unsuccessful. I don't recommend it. Very hard language to learn for me. And I went to China. I worked with the World Health Organization in Denmark for a bit. I went up north to the Northwest Territories and the Yukon, and I went to Australia for a bit as well, and a bit of South America. So yeah, I kind of just bummed around for a while.
That's very cool. Did you like the North?
I loved the North. And if it would fit into the rest of my family's life, I would live up there. I loved the North. You guys have experience in the North?
A lot of my family lives in the North, yeah.
Yeah, it's really special up there. Oh, yeah, so that's my story.
Very cool.
So I just feel like I have a lot of really probably what you're going to think is super boring, but in my mind, almost kind of nerdy questions. Start off, so I'm just curious, for the sake of it, what is your favorite procedure to do, favorite thing to do?
Egg retrievals.
Nice.
You know what? You're not the first one to say that.
Because patients are really nervous, and it almost always goes better than they expect.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a positive experience for them. It's pretty easy, especially if you've done several thousand of them. It's a pretty easy procedure. You generally get an egg from every follicle or most follicles, so it's like a highly successful procedure. And you're working with your hands, and the nurses in the room are fun, and it's lovely to do an egg retrieval. Embryo transfer is the other big procedure, of course, we do.
Mm-hmm.
That is just full of stress, right? It's just, it has to be perfect. It has to be timed right. It has to go in smoothly. That's where you're hit stains and sweaty brow. Yeah, that's where it's really stressful.
How many egg retrievals do you usually do a week?
Well, I would do about 10 a week, but as a clinic, we do, I don't know our numbers for this year so far, but it's getting close to 2,500 a year.
Oh my gosh.
But I'm one of you remember, I'm one of 8 docs doing it, so yeah. And
how many transfers do you usually do a week?
Pretty similar to our egg retrieval numbers.
Oh, okay.
So pretty similar numbers transfers to egg retrievals, yeah.
Right. Would you say, Dr. Taylor, that most of your patients for intended parent purposes are international, or are most of them from like Canadian?
I would say it's 2/3 Canadian, 1/3 international.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's
so the answer is
interesting.
most, be
Right.
domestic, yeah.
And do most of your Canadian couples, like, are they in the Vancouver area, or do you see a lot of travel in for you guys?
We see British Columbia. So
Okay.
yeah, that's most of our intended parents would be British Columbia. We get some from Alberta, like Edmonton. We find we get quite a few, and we get some second opinions from Saskatoon, and then some from Winnipeg.
Right.
But the vast majority would be from BC. Yeah.
So how did you come to Olive?
Well, my oldest daughter's name's Olive,
Cool.
so we named the clinic after her. Yeah.
That's so
And
cool.
we also Olive has other meetings that relate to fertility, but
Right.
without getting into too much boring detail,
We love the
all
boring
of us
details.
here pretty much were working at a clinic called Genesis here in Vancouver, which was.
Yeah.
So if you look back at the history of IVF in Canada, even the first IVF baby came out of the UBC fertility program.
Right.
Back in, I think, 82 or 83, they had their first baby. And UBC was the only IVF program in the province until the mid-90s when Genesis was made. And then so there was just two centers,
Mm-hmm.
UBC, where I trained, and then Genesis. And when I graduated UBC, I went to Genesis to work with Dr. Curry and some of the other docs there that are still with us now. And but then Genesis, things kind of fell apart there, and we decided to branch off and make our own clinic. And that's when we set up Olive in 2013.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you
And
guys have
Genesis no longer exists now, but there are other clinics in BC.
Yeah.
Did you guys have a party last year for your 10-year anniversary?
We did actually.
Nice.
Well, we just did it up in the kitchen, you know.
Yeah.
But we have, did have a party. Yeah.
I love that.
We're
So,
celebrating.
as like the nerdy science girl in me, from your position today, what is your, you know, if you're thinking your daughter, your sister, whoever, what's your biggest
Advice?
piece of advice in terms of this? Really, it seems to be very almost hot topic, the line you walk between pregnancy prevention and, you know, not doing anything that hurts your fertility for the future. Like, what's your best piece of advice around that?
For someone who, doesn't want to get married or doesn't want to get pregnant at 21, but maybe wants to get pregnant at like 26.
Yeah, if you're going to get pregnant at 26, don't do anything. Just go live your life. Check your AMH.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
If it's fine, just go live your life.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not going to get pregnant till you're 36, that's a different conversation. And that's where you really should freeze some eggs and monitor your AMH over time.
Right.
How often do you recommend like checking your AMH, and what do you, because we've definitely seen lots of, especially in the last little while, like the same person, their AMH is really not staying stable like we kind of would have used to have seen.
In 2 years, mine went from 36 to 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is funny that way, right? It is one of these ones where I think I mean, when I was in my fellowship 20 years ago, AMH was like just being kind of talked about as a measure of ovarian reserve. So I don't actually think we have a ton of data on what AMH does with age and people who've taken the pill or not, or had an IUD or had a pregnancy. We don't have a lot of data. So I know what you mean. These fluctuations are weird and they're really alarming, right? But I think you should probably check it every year.
Right. Interesting.
And see what it's doing.
And from your women's health perspective, what's your best option for birth control as, you know, a young woman who doesn't want to get pregnant today?
Yeah, so I mean, I really like an IUD.
Mm-hmm.
I have one in myself.
Mm-hmm.
I like an IUD because I think it's really reliable contraception.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
If you get one with progesterone in it, it takes your periods away. Eventually, it can be stubborn at first, but eventually it takes most people's periods away, which means your iron levels are now going to be much higher.
Right.
So now you don't have to worry about pregnancy, and you've got decent iron levels, and you're not harming your fertility. Unless in the exceedingly rare scenario, you got an infection from an IUD, which does happen, maybe 1 in a couple thousand women. So it's rare, but that would be the only time you could potentially harm your fertility is if you got an infection from the IUD. But again, even women who get an infection, when I see them afterwards, usually there's no big harm. So in any case, I would say an IUD. Now, a lot of virginal girls or not don't want to have an IUD because it hurts to go in. And we're actually kind of working on that. model of women's healthcare. That's a bigger discussion about how we manage women's pain, right? Like if you were inserting a foreign object into a man, not to be like pit genders here, there would be sedation for that. And we don't do that for women. That's changing now. There's sedation that's being done more and more often now. So I think that's going to get better. So the fear of the IUD insertion, I think, will get better. So the short answer is, though I never make things a short answer.
I love it.
The short answer would be an IUD would be my suggestion. But I don't, there actually is no evidence that the birth control pill harms your future egg count or fertility, though there'll be lots of people that will report that. But I think that's more coincidental than it is based in science. So I think actually the pill is fine as well. But the pill is fraught with people gain weight and you miss pills and, a lot of people don't feel good. It drops your libido. It drops mood for a lot of people. Certainly did for me. So I never took the pill, but I didn't need to. But, for acne, I was taking it, but I don't love the pill, but it's fine. It's not going to affect your future fertility, but I do like an IUD.
Right. I think, you're so right. And I was reading a thing the other day, like a study, that when we test out painkillers for like the last, or maybe not the last 10 years, but the last 20 years before that, they were only ever tested on men. So they didn't know what the dosage should actually be for women. Like, we have to do better. Like,
I know.
Yeah. When I had my IUD inserted, that was the most pain I've ever been in. Like, and the doctor did not tell me what to expect at all. Like, I was laying on the floor bawling, and my dad's like, I don't think this is right. Like,
no, it's not right. Yeah. But a lot of women do have a lot of pain with IUD insertion. Now, I had mine in after I'd had kids to try to stop this heavy periods I was having.
Right.
And mine didn't hurt, but I maybe just got lucky with that doctor, or maybe it was just me, or maybe it was just the technique or something. But most of my patients, I'd say, it seemed like do report that the IUD insertion is painful, and it's like, why are we accepting this? Why are we accepting this when there are ways we can manage people's pain? And that's coming. I think there's a real groundswell. You probably listened to the podcast called The Retrievals about the Yale IVF, where they were stealing, one of the nurses was stealing fentanyl, so the women were doing egg retrievals with no pain medication.
Yeah.
That actually, it speaks to the power of podcasting. That was really powerful because I think it did a lot of things. And in the fertility space, it said, wait, like, could this happen here? Like, could that happen to us? Are we really, because what it meant for me, and talking to some of my other friends who are physicians, it's like, could you have done an egg retrieval on someone and on many people where they had no sedation? Could you have kept going? Like when they're screaming in pain, could you keep going? Like, I'm like, I think I would have had to stop. Like, I can't, it almost feels like assault doing an egg retrieval on someone with no medication. And they did egg retrievals probably on tens, if not hundreds of women went through egg retrievals without any sedation at that center. And it really jarred a lot of us to go, what the hell? Like we do tolerate pain in women. Like, what are we doing here? And I think that was actually a really powerful case and podcast and message that came and went, wait, now and we're doing all these painful things to women. So we're trying to institute this thing called Penthrox, where it's an inhaled pain medication that while you're doing the procedure, you can inhale it. We've trialed it in about 20 patients so far, and it's really impressive. And so if you could somehow give a woman that you're putting an IUD in, or you're doing a biopsy, or you're putting a camera in her uterus, if you could give her, it looks like a little vape, and she could suck on that, and it would take away her pain and anxiety for 10 minutes, that would be amazing, right?
That's so
and that would open the door to a lot more stuff done in the office that women could access without having to go and have an IV at the hospital, but not, the two extremes of IV sedation in a hospital versus no pain. There is something in between, and that's, I think, probably this inhaled thing that we're exploring, because we do need to do something about women's pain.
The cases you've used it on so far have been really good reports.
Right. Yeah.
That's awesome.
We're noticing. People have been doing it in ears, nose, and throat. There's a couple of other areas of medicine who have already done it before us. But what we are noticing is that they do seem to be a little bit impaired for longer than we thought. So we thought, you just suck on it for 10 minutes, then you're fine, you drive home. We're finding they're a little bit too impaired to do that. We just have to work with that and figure out that maybe just drive home or a little longer time in the recovery area. Yeah.
That's incredible.
So I know this probably kind of piggybacks on what you're currently doing or what we've just talked about. If there was one thing you could change in what we're doing in fertility right now, what would it be?
Well, my biggest issue right now is access, right?
Mm-hmm.
So everyone waits a really long time. Then you do testing, and for a lot of tests, it's a long wait for testing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just that time. I would change that. I would honestly also change. How much time do you have?
We have all the time for
I
you,
would
Dr.
also-
Taylor.
Yeah, you only asked me for one, didn't you? I would do something about the time for access, for people's access to care. Because, right now the waits are everywhere in the country are long, and that's not really good, especially when time matters for fertility.
Mm-hmm.
So it affects time. And then I would spread the message that people shouldn't wait so long to do IVF.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know people wait long to do IVF for lots of reasons. Sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's cultural, sometimes it's their partner's not willing to do it. There's lots of reasons people do. But I do see people who delay doing IVF for no good reason, and they need to stop doing that. And I don't know how to convey that to people without seeming like I'm pushing IVF on people.
So what would your ideal timeline be then? Without what would be ideal to you?
Like if someone needs IVF, they should do it right away. They should not. This is the scenario. If you had a disease, say it was cancer, and you met with the doctor about what treatment you're going to do for cancer, and the doctor said, well, we could do treatment A, which has a 10% chance of curing your cancer, or we could do treatment B, which has a 60% chance of treating your cancer. Which one are you going to do? And everyone's going to do the one that has a 60% cure rate. But in fertility, this is what we do to people. We could do IUI, which has a 10% pregnancy rate, or we could do IVF, which has a 60% pregnancy rate. Which one would you like to do? And most people start and do the one that has 10% success rate.
It blows my mind. I literally talked to someone in my circle yesterday, and she was like, because she knows what I do and, all of the pieces that way. And she said, yeah, they've just done 3 failed rounds of IUI. And I said to her, I'm so sorry. My heart goes out to her. And all I could think was, I don't know.
By the time you pay for 3 IUIs, you could have paid for an IVF.
Well, and I don't know the last time I had someone in our circle, in our world, who said IUI worked. And obviously we're not on the same scale as you, but
I know.
Just,
and we're speaking in big generalizations
for sure.
too, right? Like there's definitely people where the sperm's just a little low and that IUI would be great for you. Or, they can't have intercourse. Well, let's do IUI. That'll be great for you. Like there are people that IUI makes absolute sense, but the majority of people doing IUI are looking at a 10% pregnancy rate when they could be looking at 60%. Now, there is a caveat there. IUI is cheaper. It's less invasive. So people want those things too. And I get that, especially when the high price tag of IVF. But if IVF was publicly funded universally, which it's not, and it won't be for the foreseeable future, but if it was funded, people would walk in the door and go straight to IVF, right?
100%.
Well, I think more often.
100%.
But
I
think people need, so when I say they should go sooner to IVF, I don't mean to say it to be crass, because there's definitely people who benefit from IUI, but most people need IVF if you're infertile.
Oh, totally.
That's the thing that I would change in Canada, is that every other thing that you want to do, unless you want to get bolt-on boobs, is paid for. Everything. Yeah. But you can't do this. How is that fair? Yeah.
I know. It's crazy.
Yeah.
What would you guys change? What else would you guys change?
Probably access as well.
Access is a really big one, especially because we help so many rural people and rural donors and rural surrogates. Mm-hmm. And it's hard when there's,
it's really hard.
When someone wants to help, but they live
in Saskatchewan
or Manitoba.
Or even here, for us to do our donations to Satellite Monitor, we still had to drive 2 hours.
Yeah. For one of us.
Access is a problem, right?
Yeah.
Access, and I really, honestly, I do think good quality care. Yeah. Because there are some centers that, are just not batting at the same level.
Yeah.
Above the table. I think
that's fair. That's true.
There's, and especially clinics that are third-party friendly, who see the value in the surrogates and the egg donors and
Yeah.
good communication with them and keeping everyone on the same page. And because at the end of the day, surrogates and egg donors are volunteers here in Canada, you know, how can we make this as streamlined and as easy as possible for the
it's true.
helper?
And even our clinic, and I'm proud of the care we provide, we definitely could do better on that. There's lots of ways we could get better.
I truly think that you guys are doing
things. Yeah.
I truly think that you guys are doing a great job, Dr. Taylor, like truly.
Yeah.
I love that you guys have the third party like separate program. It's amazing. And most of the clinics, almost all of the clinics that we work with do
They
really
have
well.
to.
They have to, yeah. But there are 2 clinics in Alberta that won't work with third party, won't do donor cycles. So like it just shuts
really
down.
Odd, right? I don't know.
It does seem weird to me, yeah. And it's sad. It's sad because now people are having to, you know, someone lives 3 hours from Edmonton. Not only now do they have to drive the 3 hours to Edmonton where maybe they could have had that done, but now they have to get on a plane and go to see you or to see someone in Toronto or whatever. So it just makes it so much harder.
I think just good information. I think because especially Jared and I talk to so many people who don't necessarily know very much about IVF or surrogacy or egg donation. I think there's still so much just like misinformation and wrong. Like sometimes people will say something and I'm like, you really thought that? Like that's so far from the truth or so far from what it's like. And I think just informing people, and I think that's one of the big reasons.
Education of it.
That's part of why we started this podcast, and a lot of reasons. Like when I started this, a big part of my goal was to like share stories and share experiences, but also how can we inform more people about their health and how to take care of their health and just
what this entire world actually entails.
Yeah.
Like there's so many misconceptions about all of it. Like all of it, what the procedure is actually like, what it actually costs, all of those things that we just wanted to have conversations with people where it just the
you
education
can learn
piece
something.
comes in.
Like that people can walk away and I mean I can learn things and the people who listen can just be better informed because this is so important. What we do is so important and these babies are so wanted and so loved and you know, how can we make there to be a little less heartbreak through this? How can we set people up better for success? How do we prevent this? You know, that's not going to be the case for everybody, but you know, what are the little things that we can do for ourselves along the way to not be in this situation or, you know, to better your odds when you're trying every month, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
I think that's the scariest thing for me is that we tell women that they have to, and like, of course women want to do this, but like, they have to go to university, they have to have a job, they have to do all these things. Now you're 32 and you're trying to have a baby and you can't. Like, how many of our donors are going to need a donor by the time that they're that age, right? Yeah. That's what worries me.
No, I know, and it seems to me that the pace of the world, we cannot wait for governments and regulatory bodies to help us. It has to go private, right? And that's the genesis of agencies, right? Like, you know, that's why they're so important is because we can't wait for the government to support, you know, the societal structure that allows women to protect their fertility or, you know, or fund their fertility treatment if they need it or, and we can't wait for federal law to change to allow us to reimburse donors or allow us to reimburse surrogates, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, we do reimburse,
I think that would be better, right? We need to change but we just can't wait. So, because the government moves so slowly.
Yeah. How can we serve the people the best way possible under the current rules, regulations, realms, all of those things?
Dr. Taylor, what's been like your favorite case that you've done? Your favorite patients, their story?
Yeah, there are the unexpected ones, right? That get pregnant when you didn't expect. In fact, if I can find them here in my office, it'll be over here. I have this stone here. These 2 stones I got probably 10 or more years ago. So it's this gray stone that's polished that has the word hope on it, and then there's a heart, and came to me as a pair. And this is actually, those are my humble stones, because this is a woman who I really was very pessimistic that she would get pregnant, you know, everything working against her, bad uterus, bad ovaries, bad eggs, everything. But she persisted like no one's business. And I kept saying, look, I think, you know, maybe you need to try something different. What about adoption? Like, we're not helping you. You're spending all your money with us. We're happy to take your money, but we're not helping you. This doesn't feel right. Let's stop. And she said, give me one more shot. Like, I just like one more shot. And then she did get pregnant, which was surprising to me. And then she gave me these 2 rocks. And she said to me, she said, you never gave up hope for me. Like, you never gave up hope. And I was like, I really did give up hope, actually, for you a long time ago. But you persisted. And I always look at those rocks and I'm like, don't give up hope on people. Don't give up hope on people.
Right.
Encourage them to persist. Anyway, it's a bit tongue in cheek, but I always keep those 2 rocks because she's like, you never gave up hope. And I was like, I kind of did. And I shouldn't have, because she proved me wrong. So I always think about her whenever I look down at those rocks. I'm like, keep going. Because there's a baby at the end of this story.
That's so cute, actually. Actually, I did give up on you for sure. That's funny. Is there something that's been like really catastrophic for you that has taken time to kind of get over, or has taught you the biggest lesson?
Yeah, I mean, there's been some times when, like I regret the things that have happened. Like I know there's times when I'll do an ultrasound on someone who's pregnant, and I'll see a lot of blood, and the heart looks a little slow, and I'll be really worried, and I'll share that pessimism. But then it turns around. Like these scans that are so early, it's hard to be so definitive, and then it can turn around and go well. And
right.
I remember one woman, she said, you know, you kind of robbed me of my joy because you were so worried for me, you know.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, I really did, you know. So there's some times where I'm like, geez, I could have been a little more optimistic, because there was a 50-50 chance this was going to turn out well. But sometimes I think I share my pessimism, having seen so much negative outcomes and lots of good outcomes too. But I think I've made that mistake before, where I've kind of robbed people of the magic and the joy of moments, because I'm so worried. I'm a real worrywart. So I have some regrets for sure.
I would have a hard time with that. I'd be like, something's wrong. Something is wrong. Like,
yeah, it's all over, and they sob, and I'm like, well, wait, no, it still might be okay. But you do. Yeah, I've definitely have some regrets sometimes over the years.
Well, it's so hard when you do see the good, bad, and the ugly, and on some level, it's your job to prepare people.
Yeah, like how much worse would it be if you would have been like, oh, it's fine, don't worry about it, and then something happened, right?
Like
something happens, right? Yeah. I know, it's that balance, right?
Right.
It is such a fine line. What's something that you're working on that you're really excited about in terms of IVF and fertility?
Well, there's some neat stuff coming down with like non-invasive PGT. I think that's interesting science. But I was going to actually circle back to surrogacy with you guys.
Sure.
You guys are experts at that. And one of the great limits is access to surrogates. And I really would love it if we could put a billboard up in all our communities that says, like, it is amazing to be a surrogate. Would you like to be one? Call us if you would.
Yeah.
And it's such a shame that we can't do that, because I think there's a lot of women who would like to be a surrogate. Many of my girlfriends are like, now they're all in their 40s and 50s like I am, but they felt great in pregnancy. They would love to be a surrogate, but it never crossed their mind. And I just wish we could somehow get more surrogates, because I have so many patients waiting for a surrogate. Send most of them to you guys, but there's just so many looking for a surrogate, right?
It's so, I mean, it doesn't even really feel like a stretch to say you could probably have 85 intended parents to every one surrogate. Like, it's so needed. It's so...
Like, we do our best to do a lot of advertising and a lot of, education and trying to get it in front of as many women as we possibly can, but it's so hard because there's so much societal pressure, and there's so much...
We still even see cultural stigma, for sure.
And disinformation about surrogacy, and
Yeah, lots of people who we talked to who still didn't understand what gestational surrogacy would be. Like, they had assumed it was traditional surrogacy, which is
Right.
so different. And
Or their boyfriend doesn't want them
Yeah.
to be a surrogate, or their mom doesn't want them to be a surrogate, or
Right.
whatever.
we talked to a lot of people that if it wasn't for the other people in their life, they would totally do it. But it's because of it's because of the list of people that they care about who don't want them to do it that
Which
stops
is
them.
so sad to me, because then when you're 60 and you're really confident and you're able to tell people to F off because you don't care about what they think,
Right.
then it's too late, right? Like,
It's too late.
I wish
Totally.
that women could have that confidence to be like, no, I'm doing this. This is important to me. I want to be a surrogate. I want to change someone's life.
Yeah.
I don't care what you think.
And the
But-
thing is, I think most people in that situation, like, because there are ladies who, have kind of said something along that line,
Yeah.
tough titties, I'm doing this anyways.
Yeah.
And you know what? The people that love you and truly care about you, they follow suit. Like,
Yeah, they figured it out.
like they
Yeah.
do eventually get over that. But I understand that scary fear.
Yeah.
I think one of the other things that gets in people's heads is, your work, your employer, not wanting to buck the trend there. We've talked to a few. It's a common thing when we talk to lawyers about, you do have a right to have the time off to do this. Your employer can't take your job away from you because you're a surrogate, but so many women are just so scared of bucking that trend that, that reliability of their job is not worth losing, right?
Yeah, it is frustrating.
Well, that's interesting.
It is frustrating, though, because we do talk to a lot of women who want to do it, but there is something standing in their way. And, I don't really talk to that many surrogates, but Maria does, and Maria can't remove that roadblock for you. You have to remove it, right? So, yeah.
It gets to be.
Yeah.
Surrogates are amazing. They change the world.
Yeah.
It's something we talk about so much. We had a surrogate on here not long ago, and she'd given birth, and not only had the intended parents come, but both sets of grandparents came, aunts and uncles came, and these babies just changed the world at such a deep level, because not only did you make parents, you made grandparents, you made aunts, you made uncles, and then that tiny baby is going to turn into a 40-year-old one day who's, a parent and
who maybe
an aunt and uncle.
goes to medical school and makes some kind of breakthrough with fertility.
Yeah, it's a generational thing, isn't it?
Totally.
It's you change the generational trajectory of whole families,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think I just think that's so neat.
It's a miracle. Yeah.
We did a stat within a while ago now that, what do we figure? I think it's 85 different.
Yeah, I figured it out. By the time that you have a donor, a surrogate, and 2 sets of intended parents, you have 85 people, approximately, that have been a part of making that baby.
To be a part of that story. And I think that's, of course, we're so happy to jump up and down for all the people who can have a baby the old-fashioned way and who have no issues and who don't need to come and see someone like you or to see the help of someone like us.
And of course, their baby's still loved, but
it's just so special.
Yeah.
It's such a cool thing to be a part of.
Yeah, when I see a picture of any of the egg babies or the surro babies that are born with a new, it's just oh, we did that. And when I see pictures of
part of that new life.
Yeah, when I see pictures of my own egg baby, this morning, it was actually so cute. My intended parents, they had posted a picture of him wearing a Spider-Man outfit, and my kid was in bed wearing Spider-Man PJs, and I thought, well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary. No, it's extraordinary. Yeah. It's true.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. But yeah, you're so right. We need surrogates, and I wish...
Yeah,
maybe we should try a billboard.
Yeah. How do we make them fall from the sky?
Yeah.
So we get asked a lot about, what makes really great surrogates, what makes really good egg donors.
Yeah.
When you're looking at those clients, what are you...
What are you looking for?
Yeah, what are you looking for? What feels the most important to you? Because, everybody's different.
Oh, well, egg donors, you can imagine, is just AMH.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
In the absence of obesity or a major genetic disease. But egg donors are very straightforward. Surrogates, you know, you know who makes an ideal surrogate. You know, they haven't had too many babies. They haven't had too many complications. They haven't had, you know, too many medical issues. They're compliant personalities, you know, pleasers, you know, which most of them are, right?
Yeah.
Like, but the issue is that defining what too many is, right?
Right.
You know, and, but I think it's opening up. I think we started out 20 years ago really restrictive about who would be a surrogate, and now it's just opening up. And I think that goes along with more respect for women and their bodily autonomy. Like, if you want to do this, you consent to it, you know what's involved, why can't you give it a go? Right. You know, like, why can't you be a surrogate? Why can't you donate eggs? Why can't you, you know, and that's why I do find some of the regulations that we toil under are a bit prohibitive, right? Like, these women want to do this. Why does it feel so precarious to make sure we've checked the box on the West Nile virus and everything else? We're going to get in trouble with Health Canada when these people are, you know, we want to keep everyone safe, but the weight of the rules and regulations from Health Canada are so heavy. They've really made it, I think that's why clinics, as you say, in Alberta and places like that are just not doing it, because there's this heaviness that comes from Health Canada, and knowing it's criminal law, that if you breach these regulations, it's a crime, with really big consequences. And I think that's a shame, because everyone is consenting to this, right?
Yeah.
Everyone wants this. We're not coercing women or pulling them off the street saying, give us your eggs. Like, everyone's consenting, but there's this suspicion that came out of the Assisted Human Reproduction Act that says, oh, these things are prohibited, and if you don't do this, you know, Health Canada is going to come down on you. You know, which within reason is the right thing to do, but it's gotten so bad that people are scared to do third party in a lot of centers, and it's such a huge frustration for me. Like, especially, I mean, I'm LGBTQ community, right? Like, I think there should be access for people, and I'll tell you, when I see, and I'm sure you guys do too, when you see gay males, 50% of them say this feels homophobic, and I'm like, I agree. You know, we even ask them, you know, do you have sex with men in our questionnaires? Now, Health Canada's just recently dropped that in 2023, but it's a system. Sorry, I'm just going on a rant, but
I love it.
It's a system that is really challenging to wade through, and yet everyone else outside the system wants this to happen. I want this to happen quickly. My patients want a surrogate. The surrogate wants to be a surrogate. The egg donor wants to be an egg donor, and yet we're mired by this. You know, making them fill out multiple pages of genetic questionnaires when they're already going to have genetic testing done, or multiple pages of genetic questionnaires when they're donating to their eggs or sperm to make their own child. Right. Which, if they could just conceived on their own, we wouldn't put them through this.
We talk about that every once in a while, like all of the legwork that goes into this that doesn't happen when you fall for someone at the bar and turn up pregnant a month later. Like, you don't genetic test your spouse before you decide, hey, let's start to try, or sometimes you just turn up pregnant, and none of that was happening.
And when they expanded the regulator, so what and again, I don't want to rant, because our systems are good and they are designed to protect people, but my issue is that before the new regs came in 2020, I had never heard of a surrogate, an egg donor, a sperm donor ever being negatively infected by West Nile virus. Nor had I ever heard of a woman in Canada having a child affected terribly by West Nile virus.
Or the Zika.
Heard of it. Never heard of it being transmitted in IVF. Never heard of this. And now it comes in, and now all our patients now, since 2020, we have tests for West Nile virus, and can't use them if they're positive. I've not seen a positive, but how has that meaningfully helped any Canadian?
Yeah. Or like the Zika virus.
It's cost everyone now $400 or whatever it is to test for West Nile, because they all have to go to the same lab in Ontario. So it's, you know, that is just a small example of what's going on right now with the regulations. It's like, guys, are we really helping people here? Are we keeping anyone safer? And we're not. It's just bureaucratic nightmare. So I'm hoping, in fact, there's a lawyer in town here that I'm hoping to meet with sometime in September to kind of do a little pushing back and saying, okay, like, let's Because let's be honest with you, the next time they update the regulations, they're not going to take things away. They're going to add more things to it, right?
Yeah.
So let's get ahead of that and give a little bit of a pushback. And I think eventually I'm going to be, calling you guys up and saying, hey guys, we're trying to get some groundswell and get enough people saying these are too restrictive and they're not impacting patient safety or quality of care or the health of babies. They're just adding a bureaucratic load that means clinics in Edmonton don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And which means clinics in Winnipeg don't even do it, right? Like, it's, we have to be really mindful of what we're doing here. And I think it's gone a little bit astray, but I think with some groundswell, we can push back on some of these regs that say they're not helping people.
I think that's so important. Like the red tape that has to be gone through to get to even a transfer is insane. Like
it is.
Even like for the Zika virus, like I understand that that's like a super scary thing and all of those things, but she went to Mexico and she drank pina coladas on the beach for a week. She didn't go into the jungle and try and get bit by a mosquito. Like, and if the intended parents and the donor both sign and say, we know this is a risk, but we are willing to do it, because we've had it where we lose the donor because she had this trip planned. She needed to do her donation in whatever month for her school schedule. Now she can't because she has to be home for 60 days to be Zika free. Like, it's silly. It's so silly. Yeah.
It is, yeah. Yeah, it's a bit frustrating. I think it will get better. I think, like, people like you and people like me are going to kind of start to do some pushing back because I think it will get better, but we have to be mindful of these regs and rules that are.
Yeah. And I think it is important. Like, I do understand the concept, of course, because we are making babies so intentionally, but there has to be a line drawn because, when you bump uglies at the bar, like, nobody's testing that.
Yeah. You could bump uglies at the bar in Mexico and come home pregnant, and that would be.
And no one's going to do anything to you.
Yeah. No.
And your baby's going to be fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah. More than likely.
More than likely.
Yeah. So Beth, what does a day off look like for you?
Yeah.
A day off for me? Well, I have 4 children with my partner, and so day off's often just running around them doing activities. Right. I like to walk in the woods in the mornings, walk in the woods, and then I run around after my kids,
Nice. Do you live in Vancouver or on the island?
I live in Vancouver, yeah.
Nice, nice.
So,
is it a far commute for you to work?
No, I don't have I do drive. It's a bit far to walk, so I do drive to work, but yeah.
And how early do your days at the clinic start usually?
7:30 is typical. Some days I do school drop-offs and it's 9 o'clock, but most days it's 7:30. And then, usually I'm done by 4.
Oh, that's not
bad. Then I do
bad.
some emails in the evening around 8 or 9.
How old are your kids?
Olive is 17, and then there's a couple more, and then the youngest is 9.
Oh, okay. That's like a nice, like,
a nice spread
range.
wide.
Yeah.
So did you totally walk away from work for a year and all of that, or did you kind of just keep lightly working, or did you take maternity leaves?
So I did. I always check the emails, but I did take 6 months maternity leave. I gave birth to our youngest 3. Olive was my partner, gave birth to her.
Cool.
Very
That's so cool. And does your partner have like a role at Olive, or is that
no? She's a plastic surgeon.
Oh,
cool. That's so cool.
Yeah. You can't tell by this. Small. No, she's not that kind, really. Yeah.
I love that. That you guys must just have like a chaotic, busy home life though. Like the schedules and all over the place. That's so cool though.
What is Olive gonna do when she's an adult? Like next year?
She's a creative person. She likes to sew and make films and stuff. So she's gonna try to go to a creative school and figure out a path that way in the arts. So like her dream job would be like art director at a magazine.
Oh, very cool.
Or something in fashion, So we'll see how she makes that happen. That's on her, but
I would have assumed that she would go to med school.
Do you think
being surrounded by it?
Do you think any of your kids will follow in the footsteps
and go to med school?
I don't know. I don't think so. There's one of them that sort of has, the discipline. You know what I mean? Like I think med schools. I'm not smarter than anyone else. I was very disciplined in my 20s when it mattered to study hard. So I'm not smarter than anyone else. I just was very disciplined. And I have one kid who's who's quite disciplined. Well, two of them actually are quite disciplined, so they might be able to do it.
To hack it, yeah.
That's very cool.
So if you had one, I think because it's a little bit the phase where Jared and I are at and where our friend groups are and all those kinds of things, the advice you'd give to a woman in her early 30s, like what is your ideal timeline to, like, before you really start to see egg quality decline, like what do you think that magic number is?
It's AMH dependent, but the 38, it's brutal. Okay. 38 is, if you look at the line, it's linear, like it goes down and then it just plummets at 38.
Right.
So you want to do something before 38.
I thought.
And there's no time like the present, right?
So, I'm just connecting dots here because it's something I haven't necessarily thought about. So basically, egg quality is more tied to AMH. So even if someone has a low AMH, you're gonna say like low producer and low quality then?
Well, you are protected a bit by your age. So if you're 30 and you have a low AMH, you still have better eggs than a 40-year-old.
Right.
Yeah. So you are still protected by age. Age is the biggest predictor of egg quality.
Right. I'm surprised that you say 38 though, honestly, Dr. Taylor. I thought it would have been
I thought it would have been a little younger than 38. That's good. Like, it's good information to know.
Yeah.
When do you draw their line in the sand? Like, if you have more, let's say mature woman come to you, like, when do you stop doing retrievals on intended moms? Like, at what point do you draw the line in the sand?
So, to my knowledge, the oldest IVF conceived baby in Canada came from our center.
Cool.
She was 47 when she used her eggs and got a normal embryo, and we put it in her. She gave birth at 48. I don't think there's one older than that in Canada. There is one older in the US. But that speaks to, like, that is really the limit. Now, that woman had a very high AMH level at 47, so she was kind of an anomaly.
Right.
So, I have patients who are in their late 40s, like 48, 49, who are like, you've told me my pregnancy rate with IVF is less than 1%, but I cannot move to donor egg unless I at least try.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I'll let those women try. I'll say, okay, you know what the side effects of the medications are, the costs, the consequences of this. If you still want to do this, let's try. Let's see if you can grow eggs. Because a lot of women inherently believe they are younger than the data, that they eat organic and they've lived a really healthy life, and so they feel that they are a better prognosis than what the numbers and what I predicted will be. Right. And for those women, they need to see for themselves how it goes. The odd time we'll go to the egg retrieval in a 47 or 48-year-old. I don't know if we've ever done older than 48 egg retrieval.
Did she only get one embryo?
No, she got multiple embryos, and then we tested them and found a normal one after like 3 IVF cycles.
Wow.
That's that example, crazy. Yeah. But some women need that for closure. Like, they need to know that they did everything they can to have a baby with their own eggs before they're willing to consider donor eggs. So I know some clinics have a hard cutoff. We won't treat anyone after 43. But what if you're 44 and you have an amazing AMH and you just had a baby 2 years ago? Like, that prognosis is very different than someone who's 44 with a terrible AMH. So it is a bit about what we think their prognosis is, and we have a model that we put their data in, their BMI, their age, their AMH, their past history. We put it in and we'll spit out a number for us on what the chances of a live birth are. And we say to them, look, this is your chances. Your live birth chance is 4%. Do you still want to do this? We don't recommend it. We consider anything under 5% to be really futile, because it means that it's very, 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 very exceedingly unlikely to work. But if this is really important for you, we'll go. So we don't have a hard cutoff, but we know that we don't have a baby after 47, right?
So I have a question then. So for these ladies that, really truly have, checked every box over the years, the super healthy, the eat organic, at the gym, all of those things, when it comes, that really do you think that they're going to beat the odds and beat the numbers? Is that really accurate? Like, aren't those people in the numbers that are laid out?
They are in the numbers. They are. You're exactly right.
Okay.
But they don't believe it, right? And I get why people people feel that they're an exception, and there
Right.
are exceptions, but no, they are in those numbers. You're right. They
Like,
are represented
okay.
in those numbers. So they're not different from anyone else, because this is not about, like, those lifestyle changes might help, a little bit, but when the impact of age and oxidative damage to your eggs is so high that you can't trump that with organic food.
Yeah. Do you think, Maria and I have been, we've been reading about this a lot because, it is something that, I'm approaching 30, she's
also approaching 30.
What do you think is affecting fertility the most? Do you think it's environmental? Do you think it's what we're eating? Do you think it's just that
substances? What do you, if you were to point your finger at the biggest infertility robber, what do you think it is?
Besides time?
Besides time.
Besides time. So, because time is the biggest one, right?
Yeah.
No, I do think there's something environmentally going on. I don't think it's the catastrophe I don't think it's as bad as we think. I do think that there's things in our environment and estrogens in our foods and estrogens in our plastics and microplastics. I think absolutely those are having an effect on fertility. But I think the effect is actually pretty small. But over time, it's going to be huge, right? So suppose the effect of microplastics and estrogen disruptors and other hormone disruptors in our plastic and drinking bottles and in the air pollution and in our water, those effects, suppose they have an effect of 0.5% per year. So over the course of my career, maybe we see declining sperm by a few percentage points, right? But over 100 years, it's going to matter. So I do think there is something environmentally going on, and we see it. Even there's interesting stuff looking at sperm parameters in men who are live in an area where there's forest fires.
Oh.
And the toxins in that, and they've done studies in University of Washington where they had I don't know if it's mice or rats, but anyway, some little rodent in areas where they had the environment, it was wildfire smoke, and they were half of them had filtered air and half of them did not. They just breathed the wildfire smoke, and then they looked at their sperm parameters, and there was a decline in fertility. So there is definitely an environmental impact on fertility, but I think that it's still kind of small, but it's going to show up in the next generations more so. I don't think any fertility crisis we have right now, I think, is related necessarily to the environment. I think it's really related to just age. Yeah, so, marijuana has a bit of an effect on sperm and alcohol and things, but they've been, people have been putting poisons into their bodies for a long time, including tobacco. People don't smoke cigarettes so much anymore, so there's less of that effect, but now we have marijuana having an effect and some alcohol. But I think endocrine disruptors in our food and water supply are the next big threat to fertility. But the effect, again, I'm repeating myself, the effect is small right now.
Right. So we've done this before a couple times, and I just always find the answers interesting. So if you were to put our big 3 crimes in order, marijuana, tobacco, and alcohol, what is most damaging to least damaging? How do you place those? Because I always find this answer interesting.
God, I'd have to look at the data, but for if you're talking about sperm, it would be tobacco, smoking tobacco. So smoking cigarettes is the worst for sperm. Then I would put marijuana and then alcohol. But alcohol's so variable, right? 2 or 3 drinks a day probably doesn't affect your sperm. It's when you have these big, massive binge drinks that you get toxic to sperm. But I put alcohol on the bottom.
What about for egg quality?
Egg quality, I'd have the same order.
Okay. Yeah. It's always shocks me because basically you guys all agree. It's tobacco, marijuana, and then alcohol on the bottom. And I always find it so interesting that it's tobacco on top. I wouldn't have necessarily thought that.
Yeah, and then caffeine is on the list for women for miscarriage. So that's well correlated. So more than 200 milligrams of caffeine a day does increase your risk of miscarriage. So caffeine would also be another one on the list.
Right. Interesting. And does caffeine really have a play at all on sperm health?
No, not as strong, not as compelling. No, so no real effect on sperm.
That's fun.
Anything else for sperm health and egg quality? I think that's just something so interesting. It's information people can use and know. Yeah. Anything else you think we're missing?
Actionable stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So of course, heat is the big toxin for sperm. So no cell phones in the front pocket, no laptops, no hot tubs or saunas, and no long bike rides. Heat's a huge toxin for sperm.
That's really interesting because, like, you would think, like, you know, when you get injured, you put a hot pack on it.
Yeah. Not around your testicles.
Yeah.
It's the reason they're outside the body, right?
Yeah.
They're supposed to be cooler.
Yeah, that's funny.
I know you have to go soon, Dr. Taylor. Do you have any questions for us? We have one more question for you.
Yeah.
We always ask our guests, if you could have supper with anyone living or passed on, who would it be? We ask
Well,
everybody.
geez, I just watched the DNC, the Democratic National Convention last night, and listened to Barack Obama speak, and I would put him on the list now.
That's so cool.
And the guy is just such a dynamic, amazing human being. I'd love to like hang out with Barack Obama. That's who I'd want to hang out with.
That would be pretty cool.
Well, Dr. Taylor, thank you so much. Oh, what were you
Sorry, Dr. Taylor, I really want to thank you.
Yes.
I know that you are very busy, and I know that you have a lot going on, but when I went outside to help Trip, I asked her, do you want me to ask Dr. Taylor anything? And she said, no, I just want you to thank her, and I want to thank you too.
Yeah.
We really appreciate
nice.
We really appreciate Olive.
Look, anytime. Thanks for letting me vent. I know I can go off on tangents, but I really appreciate this dialogue. It's nice talking to like smart, well-informed people who feel the same or similar to me.
Yeah,
It was fun. I enjoyed this.
Thank you so
Take
much.
care.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.